Welcome to 5 Good Questions. I'm your host, Jake Taylor. Our guest today is Betsy Atkins. Betsy is a 3-time CEO, serial entrepreneur, and founder of Baja Corp. She's a corporate governance expert with an eye for making boards a competitive asset. Her corporate board experience is vast and covers multiple industries, and she's served on over 27 public boards and been through 13 IPOs. Today we're going to be discussing her book, Be Board Ready: The Secrets to Landing a Board Seat and Being a Great Director. Let's ask Betsy 5 good questions. But first, I'm happy to announce my literary debut, The Rebel Allocator, is now available on Amazon in both print and digital formats. You could say it's about time. I've been pouring my heart into this book for more than 3 years. A well-known SoCal billionaire received an early copy of the book and actually called me to say he enjoyed the story and was adamant that I get it made into a movie. Talk about a surreal experience getting 20 minutes on the phone with one of my heroes. My friend Tobias Carlisle had this to say: Jacob Taylor has written a modern-day investment classic. The Rebel Allocator is reminiscences of a stock operator for value investors. It's a fictionalized retelling of the lessons in The Intelligent Investor in an accessible page-turner. If you want to learn how to invest like Warren Buffett by sitting at his knee, this is the book for you. Wow, how flattering is that? I was blown away when he sent me that. I've created dozens of ad-free author interviews over the last 5 years and never asked for anything in return. If you've gotten any value out of these efforts, please do me a personal favor and pick up a copy of The Rebel Allocator. I promise you won't regret it. And now, on with the show. All right, welcome back to the program, everybody. My guest today is Betsy Atkins, and she is the author of Be Board Ready. And we're going to be talking all things board related today, which I'm super excited about. It's something that I feel like I personally have been wanting to learn more about, and that there's actually not a ton of readily available information about it. So I'm super excited about this one. So thanks for joining us today.
I'm delighted to be here.
So let's just jump right into it. And question number 1 is, what's the best way to get on a board? Let's say that I'm an individual and I'm intrigued by boards and business. How do I go about getting onto a board?
I think the first thing you need to do is distill down crisply what it is that you're going to bring. Why would someone even want you on a board? Because you have to be able to say what value you're going to bring. Is it an industry knowledge? Is it a horizontal functional capability, like you're a financial expert, you're a go-to-market expert? So what do you bring? Why would they want you? And have that crisp and clear. Then you have to figure out the channels, as you said. How do you find the gig?
Yeah.
So the obvious one is search firms. Also, look at your own network where people have a high opinion of you, where you've created credibility. Is it your boss? Is it your boss's boss? Have you presented to your corporate board where you could build a relationship with those board members? Who does business with boards? Well, attorneys, accountants, bankers. That's part of your network. So you have to figure out, the channel and what you bring.
So it's almost kind of like any job interview at that point, where you want to kind of have a unique selling proposition about yourself, and you want to find the right fit for you where they need your skills, and you have the skills to provide. Is that kind of an accurate summation?
Yes, but you need to tailor it. You really have to tailor it. So generically, you need a pitch. I'm Betsy Atkins. I'm a 3-time CEO, a serial entrepreneur. I understand innovation and digital tech transformation. I'm a tech entrepreneur, so I bring this perspective of how to stay contemporary and tech-enabled. So that's my generic one. And then, depending what industry or board opportunity, you have to tailor it and be sure you've actually got something to offer, or don't try and force a fit.
Right. All right, question number 2. We always want to examine our motivations when we're deciding, especially something big like potentially joining a board. What are some of the right reasons and some of the wrong reasons for wanting to become a board member?
So the right reason is you really admire and trust and believe in the CEO. And then additionally, you believe in the company's purpose, their vision, their mission. And you think there's actually something unique that you can bring that's additive to the people currently around the table who are board members, because they don't need you if you have a redundant set of experiences. So, for example, let's say there's a board that has only one female board member. So I might look at that and say, gee, they could use more gender diversity. And hypothetically, let's say they didn't have anybody with a tech background for tech enablement, digital transformation, innovation. And I might say, gosh, I'd be additive there. And then importantly, something about where your skills map to the journey ahead for the company. So let's say you're going through hypergrowth. You're a $200 million company growing at 40% CAGR, and you need someone who's scaled from 200 million to 2 billion. So you've been on that leg of the journey, or you have industry knowledge that's a fit, that maybe there isn't someone with enough domain industry knowledge if you're a retail company or whatever. Those are the right reasons. The wrong reasons. I'm entitled to go on a board. I'm ready. It's the next natural thing in my career, and why not? Or I don't actually have a next thing to do and I'm retiring, and I think this would be interesting and fun, and it would be prestigious at cocktail parties to mention it. I don't have enough to do. Those kinds of reasons where it's status and for you, not for what you bring to the company. You have to be focused that if you're not committed to how you're going to move the corporation better forward and help them be a better company and be an asset, you have to do oversight, but you have to also be an asset. So if you don't see how you're going to be an asset and you don't want to spend the time and really engage to be an asset and to contribute and learn about the business, the competitors, the ecosystem, all of the market dynamics, if that doesn't get you excited, you should not be doing this.
Yeah, exactly. So question number 3, and this sort of fits in. Let's say that you have the board gig. What makes for an effective board member? And I've heard other investors complain to me about how a lot of the boards that they see and that they've been on, that a lot of the people don't show up prepared. They'll read a couple, slides on the airplane flight out for the board meeting, and they just show up and are looking to eat some lunch and hang out and feel important. So how do we avoid being that person and actually be an effective board member?
So, you've hit on something that's really true and needs to be fixed. So if you want to be an effective board member, you have to, first of all, obviously be prepared. So being prepared is not only reading the materials the company gives you, because if you look at it as a board member, there are 3 things you have. You have a duty of care, you have a duty of loyalty, and you make business judgments based on the other 2. What's your duty of care? So to be careful, thoughtful, and informed. That includes reading the board materials, but is not limited to that. If you're going to be careful, thoughtful, and well-informed, you have to get your own objective information. Go out into the marketplace and look at the industry reports on your company, read the reports on your competitor, go get the things from McKinsey, Accenture, BCG, Booz on your industry, or Gartner, or IDC, or Forrester. Actually listen to your CEO's earnings calls and listen to the competitor CEO's earnings calls. And look at who are the interlopers, the startups that will surprise you. Do you really want to be the blockbuster board members that sort of didn't even notice Netflix and dismissed it as irrelevant? No. So come prepared with what they give you and do your own homework. And then be an active listener. Listen deeply to what's being said, what's not being said. Look at the engagement of the leadership team who come in and present. Read the vibe and the nonverbals in the room, because you're there to actually be a thought partner for the CEO and to be, a strategic resource, not merely in the old model, because what you cited was the old model. Come in once a quarter, opine with wise, sage wisdom, eat a donut or 2, and disappear. That model is not current anymore.
And then rubber stamp whatever the CEO wanted on your way out the door.
Exactly. Things have changed. And that model, that model went out the door with Enron and WorldCom.
Yeah. So question number 4, what role do activist investors play? And have you had any activists involved in your career as a board member?
So I've had lots of opportunities to work with, to oppose, and to engage with activists. And first of all, activists are not all the same. So they're not one general bucket for all activists. There are people who are long-term, who engage to drive change. So that might be someone like Value Act or JANA. And then there are the shorter-term people you might characterize a Carl Icahn, who would drive a shorter-term change. I've had the opportunity to work with a variety of activists. For example, at Polycom, where I was lead independent director, we had Elliot on the other side of the table. And it was a cordial engagement, and they ultimately ended up nudging us into a go private, which turned out to be the right thing. I've also been on a more change-oriented environment where I was on the board of Darden, which was the first time that a Fortune 500 had all 12 directors swept out. So I was part of the Starboard slate when Darden Restaurants had an 87% vote by the shareholders. That's pretty damning. 87% actually voted saying, do not break off Red Lobster. They did it anyways. They ignored the 87% of the ownership. And then the whole slate got replaced. I came in as the governance chair, took them from worst in class to best in class. And then recently, that's on the ISS, Institutional Shareholder Services rating of corporate governance best practices. And then the other one is kind of in the middle, where I was lead director at Home Depot Supply. Jana, who is a long-term kind of a collaborative add value activist, had been a long-term holder of our stock. They then became notified us they were going to take an activist position. We negotiated with them, and we invited the JANA partner, Scott Ostfeld, who's a principal there, to join the board. He was a great asset. He's still on the board. He's respected, admired, collaborative. He did serve as a catalyst for some changes, but it was a collaborative, cohesive process. So they're all different. But one thing for sure, the big takeaway, number one, listen to them. Do not strong arm them. Do not be rude. Do not think you know it all. See what they have to say. They've done a lot of work on their thesis. There could well be some interesting info, number one. Number two, make sure that you have ongoing engagement with very specific rules, because it can only have communication from one person on the board, because the activist will try to reach out to all the board members, and you'll have multiple threads of communication. You won't control it. It'll be a kerfuffle. So you do need to have a process, but you do need to engage and listen.
So don't let them divide and conquer.
No. And the last thing, because it's going to happen, a best practice on a board, you should have your bankers once a year do an outside-in assessment of where would an activist find vulnerabilities, what could you do better, how would, and if they put on their activist glasses, what would they tell the company to do? And you should do that, because you should understand if you're underperforming or there are areas to improve.
So almost like a pre-activism, checkup.
Precisely.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that's probably a really good thing that probably not enough companies are doing. Obviously, when the activist shows up, it's kind of the horse is out of the barn at that point.
Yes. Yeah.
So question number 5, and this is just gratuitously for my own personal education, if and when I ever want to get on a board. But what are the biggest mistakes that you see first-time board members make?
They think that they're supposed to comment on every topic. They talk too much.
Okay.
Think of a board meeting like a baseball game. There are 9 innings. How many times do you get at bat? 3, 4, 5? Not more than that. That's your number of comments. Self-moderate to a baseball game's level of engagement. So that will keep you from chirping and saying, oh, I agree, or a good idea. Nobody needs that. What they need, you have to have something additive to say, or don't say anything. Be an active listener. Pay attention. And never, never, never look at your email. Do not be doing your email. Everybody knows if you're not paying attention. If you can't control your ADD tendencies, then address that. But do not sit in the board meeting and multitask.
That's great. So what? How many times, like, let's say 4 board members, I don't know, maybe like a few hours at a time that you show up, how many comments per hour do you think would be kind of the right thing for a first-time board member if you had to actually put a number on it?
No more than 1 an hour. 3 or 4 hour board meeting, 3 or 4 comments. Tops. Max. And by the way, don't be a filibuster. Make a comment, not a speech.
And does that adjust a little bit depending on the size of the board? Like, I assume if it's a 12-person board, maybe it's even less, compared to like maybe a 7 or 8-person board.
Absolutely common sense, and you're right. Because you got to give everybody airtime.
Right. So we're going to wrap up part 1 here, and we're looking for a book recommendation. And that would be something that you think is kind of generally underappreciated. So what do you have for us today for your first book recommendation?
I like a book called The Rules of Civility. And it was a contemporary kind of bestseller a couple of years ago. And what I liked about it was one of the main characters bases their life on reinventing and defining themselves. And they used George Washington, where he had these 16 rules of civility. And he wrote these for himself because he was sort of a lower middle class guy in the Revolutionary War period in America. And he wanted to make himself into somebody of influence. So he wrote these 16 rules of civility of how he was going to reinvent himself. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think I remember reading that story at one point and thinking, wow, that was really, really thoughtful of him to lay out some almost like core values for himself that he was going to stick to and look at them every day when he woke up and like, okay, this is what I'm all about.
Exactly. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. I liked it.
Well, Betsy, thank you for joining us for part 1 of all things board related. And everybody get ready for part 2 next week. And we're excited to share it with you guys. Before you go, do me the huge honor of picking up your copy of The Rebel Allocator, available on Amazon in both print and digital formats. It's a business person's guide to effective capital allocation, told in a coming-of-age story of a college grad who crosses paths with a wealthy Midwesterner. It's fiction for the nonfiction reader. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this interview. If you'd like to support this author and purchase their book, click here. If you'd like to become a subscriber to 5GQ, click here. And I included a couple other interviews that you might appreciate right here. Thanks. Happy reading.